So according to statistics from the Johns Hopkins University, there are over 4.15 million novel coronavirus cases worldwide. Over 284,000 people have died. More than 1.43 million people have recovered. In the United States, there's 1.34 million people. That's almost 1.5 million people diagnosed with coronavirus. 79,900 people in the United States have died so far. Now, all of these numbers, as we say every day, they're undercounts. They're not overcounts, they're undercounts. How are they undercounts? They're undercounts because there's a lot of people who died who never got tested, and there's a lot of people walking around with coronavirus and who recovered and also were never tested and have no idea. It was about 2 weeks ago that New York State did a test, and they figured that almost 20%, 1 out of 5 people in New York City, and that was 2 weeks ago, already had the antibodies for coronavirus. That means 1 out of 5 people living in New York City had coronavirus and may not have even known about it. Well, one thing about coronavirus, it doesn't know skin color. It doesn't know socioeconomic status, although it appears that there are a lot of people in the minority communities and the working class communities who are getting sick and dying, but it's really an equal opportunity killer in the sense that when it comes to you and you get it, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter who you are. And on Friday, Vice President Mike Pence, it's made it to the White House. He was about to take off to Iowa to promote efforts to reopen the economy, demonstrate that life is returning to normal, but his plane was delayed for over an hour when a member of his staff, it was Press Secretary Katie Miller, that's his press secretary. She is the wife of Lurch. That is correct. She married Lurch, that guy, Stephen Miller. He is the architect of President Trump's very, very evil and harsh and unfair and certainly non-welcoming immigration laws. Well, Katie, his wife, got sick. And I certainly don't wish anybody to be ill, even people I disagree with wholeheartedly, even a guy like Lurch. But the point is that even Lurch and Lurch's family may get it. So on Saturday, 3 key members of the Corona Task Force have now decided, because they're smart people, and they are also, not only they're smart people, they're considerate people. They're not just about themselves. Dr. Anthony Fauci, for one, because he was in the White House and they're members of the White House, he is at home and he is not contacting, he's quarantining himself for 2 weeks along with the head of the CDC because they're concerned they may have coronavirus and may give it to other people. On Saturday, it was reported that Ivanka Trump's personal assistant also tested for coronavirus. And it was also reported that 11 employees of the Secret Service who protect Donald Trump have the coronavirus. Additional 60 people as part of the Secret Service are in quarantine. So despite, and of course, Donald Trump's personal valet, how could we forget? His personal valet also came down with coronavirus. He's the guy who basically dresses Donald Trump and presses his clothes every day and makes sure that he doesn't have any wrinkles in his suits. He comes next to Donald Trump. He has to. He dresses the man. I don't know how yet Donald Trump has not gotten coronavirus. Again, I don't wish it on anybody. But the point is that it can't be controlled. It's everywhere. Now, what is really, really a terrible, terrible thing that's going on with Trump and Pence is that they refuse to wear a mask. Now, for all of the reasons to wear a mask, the most important reason to wear a mask is so that you don't give it to somebody else. People who are not wearing masks out in public in the United States of America, as far as Uncle Brad is concerned, are extraordinarily selfish people because they are walking around and they are saying, I don't care if somebody else gets sick. I don't care if I get somebody ill because it doesn't affect me. The number one reason to wear a mask is not to infect somebody else. Now, obviously, if you are also wearing a mask, you would not necessarily breathe in coronavirus, although there's other holes in your face, your eyes, and your ears that it can go into, but at least you're protecting 2 out of the 4 or 5 holes on your head. Now, I just read in the New York Times that there was a very serious scientific study, and they said besides social distancing, the thing that works best by preventing the spread of coronavirus is people wearing masks out in public. It is the second best thing to do other than social distance. It works. It prevents the spread of the virus. And if every person in the United States of America wore a mask, we would be lowering the curve. We would be flattening the curve. But unfortunately, we have a lot of mask holes. You know what a mask hole is? Somebody who doesn't wear a mask. And you know who the number 1 and number 2 mask holes are? It's Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Because even today, as you can see on all the various pictures from the White House, every person who works in that White House, including the Secret Service, including all of the aides, all have to wear masks. There's only 2 people who don't have to wear masks, Trump and Pence. They're allowed to infect anybody they want because they are selfish mask holes. And as leaders of the United States, if anybody should be leading and showing people that if you wear a mask, you will prevent the spread of coronavirus, we can get back to normal faster, it would be Donald Trump and Mike Pence. But they don't do it. And as a result of them not doing it, people follow. And as a result of people following, there will be more death, more illness, and this will go on for longer. Mike Pence and Donald Trump, wear your mask and stop being a mask hole. Before I get even into New York, what's going on in New York, another comment I want to just on the top of my head. You know, we're fighting 2 wars here, okay? And everybody has to understand that. There's 2 wars that we are fighting here with coronavirus. What are the 2 wars? We're fighting a health war. We don't want people to be sick. But we are also fighting an economic war because the solution to not getting sick is self-destroying our entire economy. So we are fighting 2 wars at the same exact time. And there has to be a balance, and there has to be a decision made of a balance between fighting these 2 wars. We got to win ultimately both wars, understanding that in a war, there are casualties. All right? Nobody gets through a war without bruises, without death. Okay? There's going to be casualties in the economy. There are going to be casualties in terms of death by this virus. But ultimately, we have to win the war. So if you are saying, how is there one way based on what we have, our tools that we have today, the tools that we have in our existence today, because we don't have a vaccine, we don't have treatments. What are the tools? The tools are stay at home, social distance, and if you're going out, wear a mask, because that prevents people from giving the virus to somebody else. It actually prevents the spread of the virus. And if Donald Trump wants to be reelected, what stupid way would you not want to wear a mask? Why? Because if you're wearing a mask, you're preventing the spread of the virus. Less people dead, more people will vote for you. Number 2, less people dead, less people sick, the better the economy will get, and it'll come faster. So for all of those reasons, stop being a mask hole. With that said, 3 New York children have died of an inflammatory syndrome, and they say that unfortunately it's connected to coronavirus, and that's according to Governor Cuomo. As a result, when everybody thought that we had at least some level of assurity that our children, God forbid they get sick, would survive, now that's not necessarily the case. An inflammatory illness recently observed in dozens of New York children, one that state health officials say is linked to coronavirus. It's killed a teenager and also 2 children under the age of 8 in the state of New York. New York Governor Cuomo said Saturday, we were laboring under the impression young people were not affected by coronavirus. We're not so sure that is the fact anymore. Now, apparently, children had fever and symptoms similar to toxic shock syndrome and Kawasaki disease. Kawasaki disease causes inflammation in the walls of the blood vessels, including those that supply blood to the heart, which in rare cases can lead to deadly limitations in blood flow. And it seems to me, and I'm not a doctor, but every time I read stories about people who are getting ill and people who are dying, now, for sure, they don't know for a fact that it is linked, that nobody has scientifically said 100% it's linked, but they believe it is. What I've noticed, and I'm not a doctor, but what I have noticed is that in all of the deaths, it's always about some sort of inflammation, an inflammation of your lungs, and it fills up with fluid. In terms of these children, it's an inflammation of blood vessels. So apparently this virus is causing very, very severe inflammation in certain people. And in other people, it's not. I don't know why. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. It just appears to me that that is the way that the coronavirus seems to be killing lots of people. Now, today, New York Governor Cuomo announced that parts of New York State, that's where I live, will allow a wide range of businesses from construction and manufacturing and drive-in theaters to reopen by the end of the week. Unfortunately, it's not here in New York City for us. It is up in the Finger Lakes, the Southern Tier and Mohawk Valley regions. That's Western New York and upstate New York. And that is where New York hits, the borders with Canada and Pennsylvania. Now, New York City is not one of the areas that is ready to reopen. The state has been the epicenter of the U.S. outbreak with more than 26,000 deaths. But the daily death toll has been dropping steady with 161 deaths Sunday, which has been the lowest total since March. This week, Alabama, Arizona, South Carolina, they're going to permit dine-in service with occupancy restrictions. Prime Minister Boris Johnson actively is encouraging people in the UK to go back to work. He wants elementary schools across Germany and France are going to reopen on Monday. Arkansas is allowing dental offices to reopen. Minnesota is allowing dentists, doctors, and veterinarians to resume elective surgeries. I got a text message from my eye doctor today that says he's going to be open on May 18th in New York City. So I guess lots of doctors will be open as well. Not law offices yet. We'll still be at home. But here it is, folks. This is the prime example. Of the two wars that we are fighting. We're fighting the economic war because if we stay home too long, we're going to lose the economic war. And at the same time, we have to still win the health war. We want to be alive. We want the people we love to be alive. So they're going to go slowly. And it appears that based on everything I'm reading, politicians and the public are willing to have a certain amount of loss of life in order to get back to normal. Now, Mayor de Blasio here in New York City, he hasn't asked me one question about what I would do, but if he's watching, this is what I would do for the restaurants, because there's no reason not to do it right now. We have lots of streets here in New York City, and we're coming into spring and summer. I think every restaurant should be allowed to open, and they should be allowed to make sidewalk cafes for everybody. And everybody should be eating outside. And you could have an area where the waiters can bring the food, and you can have an orderly succession of people going up to like some sort of buffet counter to pick up their food outside and then come back to their table so that the waiter's not even actually serving you your food. That's how I think restaurants should open, but nobody has spread. Visa bulletin. On Thursday, we talked about the visa bulletin for family-based petitions. Now we want to talk about the visa bulletin for employment-based petitions. So for employment-based petitions, the visa bulletin tells you the day in which you are eligible for a green card. Now, the day in which you're eligible for your green card is called the priority date. How do you establish a priority date? The priority date is established on the day in which your labor application is filed or your visa petition is filed, whichever comes first. So if we look at the visa bulletin right now, and we're looking at dates for filing of employment-based visa applications, these are dates that says when you are eligible for your green card. And people are probably saying, well, what am I looking at here? Well, the first category is for extraordinary ability people, people who won major international awards, people who are top in their fields. They can sponsor themselves. The second category are for people with master's degrees or 5 years experience in a job, plus a bachelor's degree, or people who are working in the national interest. If you look, it says all chargeability aliens except those listed. That means that's the entire world. So for extraordinary ability people, people with master's degrees outside of China, El Salvador, India, Mexico, and the Philippines, they're all eligible to get a green card immediately, but for Donald Trump's ban on immigrant visas outside of the United States, but certainly in the United States, they are eligible to adjust. Third category is your skilled workers, somebody who may not necessarily have a bachelor's degree, but has at least 2 years experience in a job. And your other workers are your household workers. Even the household workers, those people who started on April 1st, 2019 are eligible to get their green cards. So a job sponsorship for a household worker is literally a 13-month process from the time you file to the time when you become eligible for your green card. The fourth category is religious workers. Those are your priests, your rabbis. The certain other religious workers are people who are not necessarily the heads of the church, but other religious types, such as perhaps missionary or people who are selling Bible books and things of that nature. Your fifth category, those are your investor visas, your multi-million-dollar visas. As you can see on the visa category, everything is current for the entire world except the third category, which are your skilled workers, and your other workers. Of course, China, El Salvador, India, Mexico, Philippines have their own waiting lists. And people say, well, why do they have that? Because under the law, you can only have up to 4% of any particular country immigrate to the United States in any given year. And obviously, China, El Salvador, India, Mexico, Philippines are the five largest countries of people who are immigrating to the United States, since they exceed the 4% global population of any particular country. They have their own waiting list. Meanwhile, a New York doctor who's been treating coronavirus patients here in New York, she's still reeling days after getting a devastating letter. Her green card application was denied. So Tuesday of last week, Dr. Julia Irafate told CNN's Chris Cuomo, the brother of our governor, I'm putting my life on the line every day to do this, and it's just blowing my mind right now that they are not appreciating it, or they don't see the value in what I'm offering to do. I'm honestly besides myself. It's like a slap in the face. Irafate is an assistant professor at Columbia University Medical School who specializes in sports medicine, but she wanted to volunteer to work on the front lines as coronavirus cases spiked in her city. She says, because I'm a doctor, because that's what I do, because I know that I can help. Now, when you're a medical doctor, if we go back to the visa waiting list, Lee, for a second, we look at where a medical doctor would fall under. A medical doctor would fall under one of two, either the first category, because they have some sort of extraordinary ability, but I don't know why this doctor would be somebody of extraordinary ability. They would most likely fall under the second category, which is somebody with a master's degree. However, in order to get sponsored in a second degree, in a second category employment-based case, so I could tell you exactly, without even knowing this woman, I know exactly what happened. As a medical doctor, you have to get an interested government agency to say that your work is in the national interest, or you have to be working in a medically underserved area as a primary physician, not as a specialist working in sports medicine, but as a primary physician who treats people for coronavirus because they come in and they give it, and that's the doctor you go for the checkup every year. So because she's not working in a primary care physician in an underserved area, and most likely because she does not have an interested government agency sponsoring her, she would have to do a perm application for a job position and have to file a labor application, and most likely never did it, and is trying to probably squeeze through either somebody with extraordinary ability or somebody maybe with an interested government agency waiver, I don't know. But unfortunately for doctors like everybody else, unless you're the top in your field, you've done something really, really special, or you're working in an underserved area doing primary care, you got to file the labor certification like everybody else, which is probably why she didn't get through. That's my guess, just from reading the news. Meanwhile, this is disgusting what's happening down in Georgia right now. Last Thursday evening, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, 2 men involved in the fatal shooting of Ahmaud Arbery near Brunswick, Georgia. I've been to Brunswick, Georgia, by the way. I know exactly where that is. They were arrested. They're facing murder charges and aggravated assault charges. And what's the saddest, most horrible thing in the world is if there was not a video, none of these people would have ever been arrested because they would have bought their story every time. And that's sad and disgusting. Thank God, at least in this particular case, there was a video. Gregory McMichael and his son, Travis McMichael, they were taken into custody. They were booked into the Glynn County Jail. Lawyers for the family of Arbery released a video last week on Tuesday that appears to show the fatal shooting of Arbery, a black jogger, and an altercation the moments before. Arbery, he was 25. He was shot to death in Brunswick. It's a coastal city midway between Savannah and Jacksonville, Florida. It's right across the intercoastal from Jekyll Island and St. Simon's Island. Police identified the 2 men who chased him as McMichael, 64, his son, Travis, 34. Neither of them have ever been arrested before. Gregory McMichael told police he and his son pursued Arbery because they believed he looked like a suspect in a recent break-in, except there was no break-ins in Brunswick in the last few months. And the only thing that we know is that he was looking into a house. That's what made him suspicious, because he stopped his run to go look into a house that was being built. Do you know how many times I do that? I do that all the time. I always walk by, even here in New York City, I always walk by construction. I always peek in. I'm always curious. That doesn't make me anything other than curious. I always do. I love looking at construction. So in the video of the shooting, Arbery is seen jogging along a road outside Brunswick, Georgia, as he often did. He did the same route often, according to those who knew the former high school football player. And that's when these 2 men just came out of nowhere on the pickup truck. Now, they got into a struggle, obviously, because if somebody pulled out a gun on me, I would get into a struggle with them too. Now, Merritt, and he says he believes the shooter's intention was to kill Arbery without any proper justification, and it was a modern day lynching. I agree. It is the most disgusting video I've ever seen in my life. The 36-second video shot from a vehicle following the pickup truck, said to initially be involved in the incident, but the man who shot the video, William Roddy Bryan, shared it with police and was cooperating with investigators. Merritt told CNN, "The only thing the suspects ever said is that Ahmaud stopped by a house that was under construction and he looked through the window. But even if that did happen, there is now a homeowner video that shows a man in a white t-shirt walk into a home that is under construction. He didn't take anything from the construction site. He didn't cause any damage to the property. It's not a felony that would invoke the citizen's arrest statute that would make this allowable." I've done this myself. I always walk in construction sites all the time. Luckily, I'm the right skin color. I don't get shot. God forbid. You're black, you get shot. It's horrible. On Sunday, musicians Jay-Z, Alicia Keys, Meek Mill, Yo Gotti released a letter to state officials demanding swift justice for Arbery. Attorneys Lee Merritt and Benjamin Crump, who represent members of Arbery's family, also signed it. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms told CNN State of the Union on Sunday she believes no arrest would have been made without the video that surfaced. I agree. And it's heartbreaking. I agree. And that it's 2020. And I agree. And that this was a lynching of an African-American man. And I also, unfortunately and sadly agree. Meanwhile, in the stupidest news to make it through 2020, Axl Rose, who is the lead singer from Guns N' Roses, if everybody remembers Axl Rose, and Steve Mnuchin, who is the Treasury Secretary, they are in a Twitter war. Why? I don't know. Well, last week, a high-profile Twitter clash occurred between musician Axl Rose and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Rose, who doesn't appear to be a frequent Twitter user, made his 4th original tweet of the year to go after the top Trump official, Mnuchin, who has been heading the Trump administration's economic response. The Guns N' Roses frontman tweeted, "It's official. Whatever anyone has previously thought of Steve Mnuchin, he's officially basically an ass." Ironically, the tweet came a day after Guns N' Roses cover Live and Let Die, and if you remember, I sang it last week, was blasted over the loudspeakers as Trump toured the Arizona Honeywell plant that makes respirators without making a mask. Anyway, the viral attack did not go unnoticed by the Treasury Secretary. He responded, "What have you done for the country lately?" he tweeted, tacking what appeared to be an emoji of the United States flag to the end of his response. However, upon closer examination, social media users notified that Mnuchin had actually used an icon of the flag of Liberia, which is nearly identical to the American flag, except instead of 50 stars, it only has one. The original tweet was deleted and replaced with the correct flag, but not before numerous images had been taken. The Liberian flag, as most people know, bears a close resemblance to the flag of the United States, representing Liberia's founding by a group of free people of color and former slaves, primarily from the United States. Well, Rose did not let it go. He wrote back, "My bad, I didn't get we're hoping to emulate Liberia's economic model," Rose tweeted sarcastically before revealing what prompted him to go after Mnuchin in the first place. But on the real, unlike this administration, I'm not responsible for 70,000 deaths. And unlike you, I don't hold a federal government position of respectability to the American people and go on TV telling them to travel the US during a pandemic. Rose appeared to be referencing Mnuchin's interview last Monday with Fox Business Network when asked by host Maria Bartiromo whether he thought international travel might resume this year. Mnuchin said it's too hard to tell and suggested that Americans should travel domestically. Mnuchin said this is a great time for people to explore America. Well, some Twitter reactions. The Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, tweeted, "Axl Rose and Steve Mnuchin are apparently fighting on Twitter. I don't think anyone saw that one coming." Another one said, "Pretty hilarious to call out Axl Rose American patriotism and then add the wrong flag," said Billboard writer Corbin Reef. And finally, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury tried to own Axl Rose with a photo of the Liberian flag and had to delete and repost with the American one. It's so good. I can't take it. GQ columnist Laura Bassett. Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.